Hey everyone, my name is Bruno and the new Everdark Sovereign Sentient Pest just went live. And well, I soloed it first try with Ironeye, and to be honest, with this build that I'm using, you should be able to as well. So as always, in this video we're gonna go over my run, my thought process, my decision making, and general tips for you to defeat this new boss. So sit tight and enjoy the video.
Zeus? Kill him! Kill him with fire! Everyone flee!
Welcome to day 1. We're playing as Ironeye, which is probably one of the best characters, if not the best character for solo, which you should definitely pick up if you're doing these kinds of solo runs. I also have more videos on Ironeye on my channel, so feel free to check them out. Links in the description below. So day 1 starts fairly standard. We just drop in and the first camp that we see, we clear it, and then we rush to level 2. And so on the screen you can already see my relic choices for this run. I started with Knight of the Beast, which is the relic that you gain after you defeat the first boss, and this is because of the effect that starting armament deals fire damage. We're going to be going with our standard weapon all the way to the very end, unless we get something better of course, which was not the case. And this combos nicely into our second one, which is the Grand Burning Scene. And this one, not because of the first effect, but because of the dexterity, which scales off of our weapons, and the fire attack power-up, which is going to be incredibly important since the boss is weak to fire. And finally, I chose the Cracked Ceiling Wax, which is one of the remembrance. I believe it's the first remembrance relic that you get with Ironeye, and it just extends the duration of weak points. And also, you get more runes from crits, which is a nice bonus. So here, I just go to this chest to grab this Stone Sword key, which is just very useful. And there's a Everjail nearby, so we'll use that. And now we're going to fight this Fire Monk. Since our bow is also fire, it doesn't, well, do that much damage, but it will pay off in the end. Also, I didn't mention, but the relic from the Tricephalus boss also has an effect in which the more you hit the enemy, more stamina you get back, and you'll be shooting constantly with the bow, so it's just a really nice skill to have. Here I just get ganked by this dog, and I almost died to it, but thankfully we managed to pull through. Then I go level up to level 3, and here I take the harp bow, which is a pretty nice option as well, since it has the add fire to the weapon as a passive skill. Still, we're very invested in our starting weapon, so we're going to use that, but for the time being, we can use the one that has an uncommon rarity, which will do more damage in the short term. So here we go straight to the Everjail. And it turns out to be a Grave Warden Duelist. This is probably one of the best Everjails you can get, especially as Ironeye, because he's pretty squishy, and he's also weak in the head. So if you manual aim to the head, you'll do a lot more damage, and you'll even stagger him. You can check out an in-depth guide on this manual aiming mechanic in one of the videos as well. Here I just use the ult. You can use your ult sparingly, it's really not a big deal, and it recharges fast. So here you always want to take the passive effect instead of the runes, unless, of course, if the passive effect is completely useless. But most of the times you really want to go for the passives. The extra runes is nice, but it's not that worth it when there's good passives at stake. So here we go for our first Scarab of the run. And we get the Ritual Shield Talisman, which is a pretty okay talisman. It's not bad to take in squishy characters like Ironeye, because it just means that you won't get one-shotted like ever if you're at full HP. And then we grab the Spear Talisman, which is actually one of the best talismans you can grab for Ironeye, since your bow attacks count as thrusting damage. And so since you have range, you can attack during the enemy's attacks at a safe distance, and this counts as thrusting counter attacks with the bow, and so you'll deal much more damage. So it's really ideal to have. So now we go into the mines to defeat the troll, so that we can get the smithing +2 and upgrade our bow to +2. Here I just use some kukris because the trolls are very weak to bleed, and just takes a big chunk off of them. We actually take a death here, which is unfortunate since the troll was almost dead, but it wasn't that detrimental since it teleported us straight into the church. So we just take this time to clear both churches, and then we go back to the mine and finish off the troll. And since we have some downtime now, I'll take this opportunity to talk about the new relic that they added with this new boss. As you might or not know, each Everdark Sovereign Monster comes with a new relic unlock that you can then purchase into a new shop that you unlock in the Round Table Hold. And this one specifically is Dark Knight of the Wise, which is the dark version of Knight of the Wise, but to be honest, it's less useful and it's more tailored to spellcasters. It increases your maximum FP, your FP is restored when you do successive attacks, and then you get maximum permanent FP for the run after you clear the Sorcerer's Rise, this is all great passives for casters. Personally, I like the base relic version better, but if you're playing either Revenant or Recluse or even Duchess, this is definitely a must, especially if you're focusing on spells. And so we're back in the mine, we finish off this troll, then we grab our smithing 2. And also, as an additional tip, in this room right here, you can always get a guaranteed Smithing Stone 1 drop, which also makes it so our upgrade path won't cost as many runes because we won't need to purchase the Smithing 1 from the merchant. From here we go straight to the castle, and since we're coming from below, I'm just going to check what's the boss of the basement. And lo and behold, it's Bellbearing Hunter, so we're not taking him on anytime soon. We might come back later, but for the time being, as level 4 character with an unupgraded weapon, it's just not worth it. So we just go and farm some runes in the castle itself. We get lucky and we get the best combination of the castle, which is the Crucible Knights. Unfortunately for Ironeye, this can be a little bit frustrating because the Crucible Knights with the shield, like this one specifically, really makes our lives a lot harder because the shield really hurts bow users since they nullify pretty much all the damage that we give to them, and we need to get into melee range in order to bait shield attacks so that we can deal damage to the Crucible Knights. Ideally here you would have the Banished Knight variant, but still this is not bad at all because Silurias do not have shields and they give off a lot more runes than Banished Knights. Here we go and kill this Scarab, and we actually get the Ritual Sword Talisman, which we trade for the Shield Sword Talisman. Essentially what this does is makes it so you deal more damage if you're at full HP, and if you're playing Ironeye, you should be at a safe distance most of the time, so you should be at full HP most of the time, ideally. The circle was closing, so we had to bail, but we'll be back later to finish off those Crucible Knights. The only drawback of this is since we died earlier, we won't have anywhere to spend our runes, so we'll have to fight day 1 boss with level 3, which is definitely not something I recommend. It's doable and we will be able to do it, but still it's something that I really do not recommend, and I even advise you, if you're in this situation, just go outside the circle and level up in a grace and then go back in, just because it'll be much better off. From these skeletons I can already tell that the boss is going to be the Tibia Mariner, which is actually a pretty annoying boss to take solo. And so let's talk a little bit about this boss. This is very similar to the Tibia Mariners that we find in Elden Ring base game, with the exception here that there's 2 health bars, because you have to fight both the Tibia Mariner and those who live in death, which is essentially his summons, the skeletons. And for this fight really you just want to fight the Tibia Mariner and just deal as much damage as you can to him. Just because he is able to resurrect those who live in death. So essentially you'll be working for nothing if you don't kill the Tibia Mariner first. Do beware that as soon as you kill off Tibia Mariner, a Deathrite bird will spawn. However, this can actually be good for you, since it has friendly fire against the skeletons. So it can actually help you clear up. Just be mindful that it will show up and it can deal a lot of damage, even though you don't really need to kill it. You just need to kill the skeletons after the Tibia Mariner. As soon as we begin day 2, we go straight back into the castle to clear the remaining Crucible Knights. And this is actually great because Crucible Castle is a guaranteed level 15 if you manage to clear the entire castle. So here I just go and upgrade the weapon to +2 and then go to the merchant, buy a Winding Grace, which you should always do if you have the chance, and then I decide to go with a Thorny Crack Tear, which is a one-time use item that allows you to deal more damage if you continue attacking, which is something that we absolutely do with the bow. As I mentioned in other videos, as an Ironeye, you really want to have your mark applied at all times. It's very, very important, and it really makes a difference in your damage output. And I still can't say this without laughing. I guess it's just how it's going to be, ever. So now here we wait some of the shield attacks to start hitting him, while we try to keep at a safe distance. We get a stagger, and we get that rune effect from the Ironeye's relic of giving us more runes when we critical hit, and that also compounds and comes in handy. So overall it's a nice to have. Also guys, I did some testing around with this specific enemy, the Crucible Knights, and I couldn't find any damage increase by targeting the head specifically. So let me know in the comments what's your best approach to deal with Crucible Knights, especially these ones that have shields when you play with ranged characters. We're now fighting our second Siluria, and in case you didn't know, in the Crucible variant of the castle, the Siluria always drop a passive. In case you can't really tell which ones are which, you can always just look at the eyes, and this is important specifically for the Banished Knight variation, since they're not physically different. The enemies that have red eyes will always drop a passive, so that's just a good tip to know as well. Here I'm a little bit indecisive, but I end up going with Scorpion Stinger because of the improved attack power at full HP. So you really, in terms of passives, what you really want to get for Ironeye is ranged attack up and ranged weapon damage fall off reduced. So these are the main two ones. The first one, well, it increases your damage, it's a no-brainer, and the second one, it just makes it so you can shoot from farther away and still deal the same damage that you would close up. So here we go fight the Royal Carrion Knight. It's a little bit of an easy fight as Ironeye because you can just stay at range. You just need to, well, know how to deal with her spells. But you shouldn't really have any problems as long as you stay relatively, I'd say at mid-distance is best. In here, I actually go for the Visage Shield, and that's because of the successive attacks negate damage passive, which is a 60% damage negation if we are shooting our bow, which is just insane. If we get unlucky to get caught mid-shot, we'll just take almost no damage, which is great. And also, this is something that you need to really consider when picking up these passives, because sometimes you're just tempted to just pick up a passive. Like, you find two weapons, none of the weapons that you want to use, just take the passive. Most of the times there's a little bit more consideration to be taken if you really want to step up and to elevate your gameplay, because weapons have passives as well, and they're just as valuable as your regular passives. The only difference is that regular passives don't occupy a weapon slot. But as Ironeye and as a ranged character, you probably won't be using that many weapon slots anyway, because you'll just find one really good bow, or great bow, or a ballista, or a crossbow, and then you'll just stick with it, right? So just use those other weapon slots as passives, okay? And you can find so many great passives in the wild that it's really worth for you to look into every single weapon that you see, even if it's off of your class. Actually decide to go back into the basement to fight the Elemer, and we shoot him in the head a few times. It deals a little bit more damage, but he doesn't stagger. Nothing staggers this man. He's incredible. So yeah, I apply the mark and then just make some distance. This fight can actually be done pretty safely with Ironeye if you have enough distance. You just need to have enough distance for you to clear. Well, I didn't hear. For you to clear his red sword attacks. If you can stay away from his sword attacks, like, you really want to fight this guy at long range. And since we were level 13, we had plenty of damage, and our bow was +2, so now it's much more doable. He still has a ton of health, but still is much more doable. So the strat here is really simple. Just make as much distance as you can. You can use your ult, he doesn't even stagger, but it doesn't matter, it just buys you some time. And then use your mark to just get away from him, like either through him or forward and backward, as we've discussed in the other video. So you really just want to kite him around and then make some distance when he becomes too close. So here the storm is closing, but he's almost dead, so I decide to push on, and that was the right call because we even get a poise break, which was huge. And so he actually drops a legendary item, which is the Wending Grace, which we definitely take, and you should take as well, especially if you're playing on solo. It's very important, just getting more reses. And then we just go and upgrade and keep on moving, since the first circle is closing. And if you noticed, we're already at level 15, and it's only the first circle of day 2, so it's huge. We're in a really good spot. We have our weapon fully upgraded, and then we'll go fish for some talismans. Unfortunately, nothing here in the list is worth. We have probably not the best twin slot, but two great talismans to have with Ironeye. So we just move along. And since the circle just closed right around here, I decided to take on this one. I just bait him out of the circle's range and then we fight him. So that's even more extra runes to then buy items with. And there's actually this really cool way to fight him, which is if you can bait his shield bash like so, then you have time for a R2, and if you're close enough like I was right here, you actually manage to hit all 3 shots, and it just dismantles him very, very fast. And so from the circle's position on the map, I can already tell that day 2 is going to end on the top right corner of the map. And so we take the remaining time of day 2 to just stock up on some resources. We are already at level 15, but we still have 1 church to collect and some passives to get along the way. So here I have my eyes set on the church, on the final church that's just outside the storm but within reach. And so we go there first before the storm starts to close. Here I go check the merchants, I buy the small pouch, and always please check the passives on the weapons that are on the shop. They might have a good passive for you, and we already talked about how important weapon passives are in this game. We grab our final flask, and now I spot a great enemy just above us, so we're going to see what it is and if it's doable and feasible to do. It's a dragon. We actually love to fight dragons as Ironeye because we can just focus on the head, you don't even need to manual aim, and you can just deal so much damage if we do our R2s, which is a volley shot that shoots 3 arrows in a small volley, but if we're up close, all the arrows hit the enemy and they do triple damage and even more poise damage, and so it's just very, very strong for bigger enemies like the dragons. Here I just go to apply the mark and then just shoot away. We're just melting this dragon at this point. We're very, very strong, even though he's not weak to fire. I just decided to go for the ult because he was going to fly away, and this just expedites the process. So from here, I actually considered taking the Serpent Bow, but I end up going with the critical hits through FP restoration. This was just in case we would get something, a new bow, a new fire bow with barrage, or any other skill that might be more useful than what we currently have, because well, it's always nice to have FP regen. So here I actually go and do the Red Mane Knights. My thought process here was I'm going to take the shield and make him fall off, but it kind of backfired, to be honest, because I managed to poke him once, but then he guard braked me and he guard countered me, and I couldn't be able to do it. But then I did a riposte with the shield, which is very, very fun. You can actually riposte with shields in this game, which is something you couldn't do in previous FromSoft titles. And I even did a full-on shield-only run in Night Rain, so videos also up in the channel. You can check that. It was a pretty fun challenge, pretty difficult and hectic one. So feel free to check that out as well. We actually don't make it back to the circle in time, but it's okay, we just take a death because the day is not over yet. And now we are fighting day 2 boss, which from, well, these enemies I can already tell it's going to be a Magma Worm. If it's a serpent-like enemy on day 2, it's Magma Worm. If it's on day 1, then it's probably Centipede Demon or Smelter Demon, and the enemies are different, but those are like the fire ones that that you can have. And they are very, very weak to headshots, as you can see. So manual aiming is definitely very, very goated here. I actually find it interesting that From decided to include this as a day 2 boss, because I think it's on the easier side than most day 2 bosses, even though this is the Theodoric's variation of the Magma Worm, which is the one that stands up in 2 feet after you deplete his health bar to half. Even so, it's a pretty okay fight. It's not very hard. You can once again focus the head and just deliver some massive R2s. And even though its health pool is quite big, it just goes down easily. Also, a fun fact, you can't actually R2 while in manual aiming mode, so be mindful of that. If you press R2 while manual aiming, it'll just do a regular R1 shot. So yeah, there's that. I actually wish we could do the volley manually, because I think it would be much more useful for groups of enemies instead of just one big enemy. So here we get the poise break, we riposte. Unfortunately he's outside the storm, so we just go and apply the mark and then go back in. And now he's finally going into phase 2 with a quarter of health, so he's almost dead. And pay attention that we're using a fire bow, and the Great Worm is resistant to fire. So just imagine you can paint a picture of how much damage we would be dealing if we would actually be using a weapon that's good against this specific enemy. We pop the mark and then we just finish him off. So I spot this red main knight camp nearby, so we just go back in. I know From buffed the storm damage after day 2, but still you have plenty of time to explore it. Just a few considerations before you do. Remember that you have 1 minute and 50 seconds. I timed this just earlier today. You have about 1 minute and 50 seconds to stay outside the storm, and it will deal just regular tick damage to you. After that time elapses, you'll start to receive double damage, and that becomes completely unsustainable and unbearable. However, you can refresh this timer by just going inside the circle, waiting a few seconds, and then just going back outside. So that's something you can do. Here I just go and use my ult for the same effect that we wanted as with the shield, and then we go just to finish off the second one. We actually go and take another death, but at this point in the game it doesn't really matter. After the day 2 ends, you can die as many times as you want with no penalty, as long as you're able to retrieve the runes before you do so. Which just goes to show that death isn't really a big penalty in this game. We died plenty of times in this run and we still managed to get level 15 and get us a good weapon, and you'll see what we'll do to the day 3 boss. So in this game, more than just being perfect or being good, it's about having a plan. It's about knowing what you're up against and what you need to attain to get to that point. So here I just go for physical damage negation. You can never go wrong with physical damage negation. And here I decided to switch my spear for this one, which has a passive of attack up at full HP. We grab another passive, and then we just clear the camp and we finish up. Here we actually grab the Golem Greatbow, which has projectile damage drop off reduced. This was one of the most important passives you can have as Ironeye, so definitely take those weapons if you see them. And so we're at day 3, we're fully decked out, we're level 15. I just go buy another Wending Grace and I put it in a slot of 4 actually. Fire resins that we brought for the boss, which is going to be incredible in our damage output because you can actually buff your weapons with fire even if the weapon is already fire, so you can get like double fire damage, which is really good. And now here I actually do something which is interesting. I buy both the Opaline and the Thorny that we had, and I drink those, and then I grab the resins and run straight to the boss. And what this does is essentially you're starting the fight with more items active than what you would normally. So now let's talk about the boss itself. This time we're fighting the Everdark Sovereign Sentient Pest, which is Gnoster, and Gnoster is actually the moth, and then there's a scorpion. They start like the other Everdark Sovereign fights in phase 2, and we just put our fire resin and start hacking away. We target Gnoster, the moth, and just take a look at the damage. It's crazy good. He goes into the rampage already, so I just go and use my oh, look at that damage, it's crazy. Unfortunately, we get caught anyways, and in retrospect, I should definitely have prioritized a relic which would grant me an additional character skill use. I think in Ironeye is very useful for us to deal with these charging and frenzy attacks that all the monsters have, and it would have certainly made a difference in this fight. However, we managed to pull ourselves together and then reset and just keep attacking, so it's not all bad. And this is all thanks to the multiple Wending Graces that we collected throughout our run, so do not skip on those, especially if you're playing solo. And he's almost dead, so GG. That was the Everdark Sovereign. I'm just kidding. We're nowhere near done. We're just halfway there. This is the first Everdark Sovereign boss that has a true second phase, in the sense that there's an extra health bar. And now from the dead bodies emerges Animus Ascendant Light, which is just a beautiful butterfly. And just like that, a 2v1 becomes a 3v1. But it's not as bad as it looks and it sounds. Animus just kind of sits there for the first part of the second fight. You'll just have to deal with phase 1 of Gnoster and Fortis for the time being, and that is until one of them dies. So what happens is when you kill either Gnoster or Fortis, then Animus will rush to its dead body and possess it, and it will awaken you with more powerful attacks and a different moveset, which is something that we come to expect from the Everdark Sovereign monsters. But that only happens when you first kill either one or the other. You then, with experience, you can choose which one of the enemies you rather fight. After fighting this boss for the first time, I can confidently say that if you had to choose, definitely go for Fortis first, because his second and enhanced phase is way easier to deal with than Gnoster's. But here, unfortunately, I just killed Gnoster first, so he goes to possess it. I actually ulted from afar, and we deal a pretty good chunk of damage, but this does not stop. The possession process, and it awakens anew. Now, with the exception that Animus can actually be damaged by attacking the enemy that he has possessed. So in this case, if we attack Gnoster, Animus will take damage as well, even though it's reduced damage, as opposed to when it's out of the body of either enemy. Here the empowered Gnoster prepares the grab, and as we've seen with this trend that FromSoft has perpetuated in the last few bosses, the empowered version always has a second of each attack, be it a grab, like we saw on Empowered Adele. Also, we see it here as well, a second grab from the empowered Gnoster, and we'll see that trend as well with Fortis when he eventually gets possessed. So after rezzing, I actually look for Gnoster, but he's nowhere to be seen. So I just take on Fortis. This becomes essentially a 1v1. I think this was a little bit of an unintended behavior. It just kind of buggered off, and I don't really know why. But, well, we're taking this opportunity to just take Fortis off. And then I start looking around to see where did Gnoster go. At this point I'm thinking, well, maybe we bugged the game and I won't be able to finish the mission. But thankfully that was not the case. He was just like on the other far side of the map for some reason, and he wasn't aggroing onto us. So we just rush there and we just take him on. The Empowered Gnoster now prepares its most important and dangerous attack, which is similar to what we see him do in phase 1 of the regular fight, just with red projectiles that just lead everywhere, so there's really nowhere safe. We unfortunately get caught by it, but this is something you really want to watch out for and just run as far as you can. It's very, very hard to dodge. And now actually Animus leaves Gnoster's body and he prioritizes Fortis, so you can actually kind of manipulate which of the enemies you want to fight, the enhanced versions, and now Gnoster just sits on the side of the map, so we essentially have a 1v1 now with Fortis, with enhanced Fortis, and this is actually very, very good for us. Enhanced Fortis is not as hard as enhanced Gnoster, just because his attacks just have a aftershock now that you see here. So he slams the ground, and after the first shock he sends an aftershock which comes in waves, which you can already see coming from the ground, and you can very easily jump them. So it's not really a hard fight, he just does the same moveset just twice. Once again, it's from strength to just have these Everdark Sovereign monsters do the same move twice. It's no different here, and it's very telegraphed and easy to read. Here we apply the mark, and just staying on its flanks is really the best decision for us to dodge. He really isn't that aggressive unless he lunges at you, and even then you can really see it coming. So it's really not a problem, and staying on its flanks is, I think, it's the best choice and the best approach if you're playing as a ranged character. He then proceeds to go into a big rampage, just creating aftershocks everywhere, and unfortunately I get caught. However, if you manage to survive this, then he just stays still and stays put on the ground for quite a lot sometimes, so you can just dish a lot of damage. Here actually what happens is that Animus actually decides to leave Fortis' body, but since we already were dealing so much damage to him, we just decide to finish him off and then go back to the 1v1, this time with Animus. But Animus rushes back to possess Fortis, but it is too late. We're just too powerful and he won't be able to do it in time, and bam, it is done. So yeah, that was the Everdark Sovereign Sentient Pest. I hope you guys enjoyed. This was one of the easiest fights, if not the easiest, from the Everdark Sovereign monsters, so I would really take this opportunity to farm as much sigils as you can, since this is a limited time event and it's really on the easier side. You can do it solo quite easily, especially if you take a ranged character like Ironeye. So thank you so much for watching, guys. Leave me in the comments what you want to see next, and I'll see you guys in the next one.